football, guys. TCU football players boycotted practice yesterday after allegations came out that head coach Gary Patterson repeated a racial slur that was used by a player this weekend. Now, just this morning, Patterson tweeted that he met with the team last night and apologized for his use of the slur. He also said the use of the word in any context is unacceptable and he must live by the same standards that he holds his players to. I've been thinking on this, but I would like, Shannon, your reaction to this story.
Well, there's never an excuse. And Gary Patterson, you don't get to determine how we communicate amongst our peers, especially in our community. You don't get to tell me how I can talk to somebody else in my community. You stick to your community and tell y'all communicate how you want to and allow us to do the same.
Yep.
But Skip, you see the recurring theme here? Now, a couple of years ago, the Clemson tight end coach did the exact same thing. He repeated what someone said. So in other words, that's an opportunity to say that word. But I'm just repeating what I'm just saying, Skip.
I also believe it happened at Iowa, so we've seen several instances of this.
We see a reoccurring theme here.
Yep.
Skip, you don't have kids, but I do. And kids would sometimes say things, and I never repeated, don't say that, you know what? We don't use that word. Why couldn't Gary Patterson simply say, whatever the player's name is, we don't use that word.
Dylan Jordan.
We don't use that word, son, here. We don't do that. But he wanted to repeat it. And then when they boycotted, they got to the meeting, Skip, he said, I wasn't calling you that again. Come on, Gary Patterson, you know. Skip, Gary Patterson known us to be a lot of these kids' grandfather. So for him not to know, and they also asked him, say, will you please stop saying you don't see color? Because everybody knows that's a lie. Because you drive, you pull up to a stop sign, you don't blow through it, you stop. You go to you run on the street, your traffic light, it turns green, you go. How can, if you don't see color, how could you do that? It's not whether or not you see color, it's that when you see that color, what's the stimuli? How do you react, Gary Patterson? Your players have every right to be upset. Skip, I don't think he should be fired, but I do think he should be suspended. I believe Gary Patterson should be suspended. He knows better than this. And we got to stop this notion, well, I'm not calling you that. I'm just saying you shouldn't say that. Okay, Dylan Jordan, we don't use that word. We really appreciate it. We're trying to clean it up. We don't say that. But for you to repeat it after you know what that word means, even in the context that when Dylan, he said it to a teammate, you don't get that luxury. But again, Skip, if you create something, you feel you should be able to say it whatever you want to. Skip, that's your car. You feel you should be able to drive it whenever you want to. You should feel you should jump in Ernestine's car, that Bentley, and drop the top, and go anywhere you want to. Now, Ernestine might pull up on you, but you feel like, well, hold on, Ernestine, I did buy it. So if I were to take it to the store.
I have to have permission.
Good, you should, because you got a lead foot. You should have to have permission. And she want her car to stay nice. But Gary Patterson is out of pocket for this. He's wrong, and the Big 12 and the university should take action against Gary Patterson.
I am so with you on this. I have zero sympathy for Gary Patterson. I agree with you. I'm not going to go so far as to say it's a fireable offense.
Yeah.
It's a suspendable offense. And it's so naively out of bounds for a coach who has been there. This is his 20th season. He's been very good there.
Yeah.
He had 6 top 10 finishes and had the one undefeated season back in 2010 with Andy Dalton. How could he not be listening to what's been transpiring over the last 2 months in this country? How could he not be following what happened at Clemson and what happened at Iowa? How could he not know and understand the culture of the majority of the athletes he coaches? I don't know exactly what TCU is in racial breakdown. Could we go 80% black? Oh, yeah. At least?
At least 70. At least 75.
Okay, let's go somewhere 70 to 80%.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So you have to understand the young men that you have some authority over, and you have to understand where your out of bounds is.
Right.
The limit of your authority. Okay, so I have been saying on television for a dozen years, I would say, white people, you can't use that word in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
You can't even use it. You can't repeat rap lyrics in which the word that I always call the most evil word in the English language, the one that your community drained the poison out of and put an A on the end of it because you use it as a term of endearment.
Right.
something that's familiar between you and another black person.
Right.
White people, no, you can't use it. You can't even repeat it
Just
as a rap
because you got
lyric.
friends that are black don't mean...
No, you can't repeat it. And obviously, Gary Patterson has... The naivete dumbfounds me. And it makes me want to go to the F word, which is, in this case, the firing word.
Right.
Because you have to understand that you can't tell this, he's a redshirt freshman, Dylan Jordan, I don't think you can say you can't use that word in our meetings because that's your call.
Right.
And again, maybe it's not the best word to use in mixed company, so to speak. You know, maybe you wouldn't use it in mixed company. Maybe if we're all sitting around after the show chatting about something. Maybe you wouldn't use it. I'm not sure I've ever heard you use it.
Not, Skip, in this kind of setting, but in football,
yes.
with the Ravens and Broncos, absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so he's saying in a meeting, and there might be there'll be some white coaches, obviously, and maybe a few white players, please don't use that word. But you can't tell the kid not to use the word by saying the word to the kid.
Exactly.
You cannot. You have stepped completely out of bounds.
Thank you.
And then I believe, if I read right, that when he addressed the team, he said, I didn't call him. And he said the whole N word, the one that ends in the hard ER. He said it to the team. I didn't call him. You cannot say that. That's a fireable offense to me. In 2020, after all we've been through, you cannot say that.
Currently going.
It cannot come out of your mouth.
It cannot.
Okay, so again, I'm going to try to be balanced on this because I read that, okay, this kid's a redshirt freshman. So he took Gary Patterson on Twitter. He posted on Twitter their conversation, his recollection of the conversation. Then a senior tight end named Artavius Lynn called out the redshirt freshman on Twitter and called him soft for posting that statement on Twitter. Okay, you get that. Like, don't call him out. Let's talk about it internally first. And then he went on and on. He followed up that tweet by saying, first and foremost, I would like to say that I am completely against all racism as a black man. And he went on. Okay, we get that. But he said, with that being said, you N-word, quote unquote, was never stated to anyone. So the point is, Gary Patterson didn't call him the N-word. He just said the N-word to him while asking him not to use the N-word, the one ending in A, in meetings. Okay, you certainly understand, no good. No go.
No.
Okay, but at least Artavius Lynn is saying he didn't, again, the fireable offense would be if he called the kid, to criticize him.
He can't say it, period. He can't make reference. What's the name of that? He can't say that word at all.
At all.
Now, remember, Skip, last year the school settled with a former player that alleged harassment and abuse. Gary Patterson, come on now. As you said, Skip, he's been there for 20 years. He understands the history of that word. He understands the history of what our country is going through currently.
I don't know if he does.
Look, there are certain things, Skip, in the South, we get a different look. He's in Texas, and it's the Southwest.
Just for the record, he's from small town Kansas. He went to Kansas State, but he's a country music. He's very good on his guitar. He sings pretty well. I called up one last night to just listen to it, but he likes to play country music. I'm not saying that qualifies him as a redneck, but he's not Texan. He's middle American.
Well, he done been in Texas so long. He Texas now.
You could argue that.
Skip, you can't. You correct the child not by actually saying the word, by saying we don't use that word, or we don't use those words. We don't talk like that. But to repeat the word, you thought that was okay. So you thought he was going to like, okay, you know what, coach, you're right. I shouldn't use that word. I don't know, Skip. These guys, these coaches, man, I don't know, Gary Patterson. I don't know where you thought this was okay. In what world is this okay, Skip?
It's especially the college coaches because they are the kings of their little kingdom.
I can never. Skip, I already know. Ain't no professional coach would ever say, not in today's time. Now, maybe back then when in the 50s and the 60s, or right at integration, maybe some things were said. But for a coach to say that now, players will step to a coach if you talk to him sideways, let alone saying that word. But these college coaches, y'all need to play a little bit more respect. I understand they're 18, 19-year-old, and they just want to get to the next level. So they're willing to take on and accept more
That is true.
harsh talk to them
Yep.
than, say, a professional will, because he's already at that level. But don't disrespect the man because you're in a position of authority. Don't, Skip, I pride myself. I've never been anybody's boss. But I would like to think the runners that we had at CBS and the people that we have here, they say, you know what? Because I always think, what if my child, what if I had this job? Would I want the professional or the analyst to talk to me sideways? No, I wouldn't. So I try to treat everybody, Skip, nice, how I would want to be treated. But Gary Patterson, you out of pocket for this. And if TCU and the Pac-12 don't, the Big 12 don't take action, I'm gonna be sadly disappointed, very disappointed.
I'm with you.
It's disappointing. I can't believe we still have these discussions sometimes.